Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched, where this week I watched The Nice Guys from 2016. Now, this is a movie that has been on my radar basically since it came out, but the main reason I haven't gotten around to watching it, I think, upon reflection, is because I was sort of cynical about it. Not that I knew a lot about it, but especially at the time, and to a lesser extent now, but still true now, I am skeptical about returns of genres I haven't seen in a while or that I have seen done poorly in recent years. And this is very clearly, from its most basic marketing, a buddy cop type of thing. And as somebody who has a great affection for a really good buddy cop, buddy action type of movie, I'm always a little hesitant to spend my time on one that might not be good, but such is the nature of, consuming new media. So I just kept putting it off and never got around to it, and it never really drew me. Part of it because, I know some people really like this film, but it's not one people remember very well or talk about very much. And by all accounts, it seems like it didn't do very well at the box office. So kind of understandable that it doesn't get talked about a lot these days. But I remembered it out of the blue, and I decided it was finally time to give it a go. And I'm glad that I did, because this was a pleasant surprise. Now, that's for a couple of reasons. One, just because it's a pretty good movie. Two, as I was watching this film, I kept thinking about another film I really like, and I think I've talked about before, which is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Another kind of underrated, buddy cop type of film that I really adore, and I even rewatched it just on a whim a couple of months ago. And lo and behold, I finished the movie and I go look at the credits and information, and I'm like, oh, this movie is written and directed by Shane Black, the guy who also wrote and directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Oh, all right. That's why they look kind of similar. Okay. And that's really not a bad thing at all. This is not just like a rehashing of the same beats or anything like that. It has enough different, that it's, there are shades of it. And if you already love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, then, this isn't going to ruin that or be ruined by it. But the comparison was certainly there. And I think it highlights one of the things that Shane Black tends to be pretty good at, which is the combination of some witty writing with some well-balanced dark humor, and having a sense of seriousness and sense of levity at the same time with some charismatic characters. And this movie really delivers that in spades. Right off the bat, I will say that I think this is a really good-looking movie. As much as I like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, there are elements of its direction and editing that I think have not aged incredibly well. Not for any, just because they're sort of stylistically dated, I would say. It is partially the era and partially just, I think, the style that was chosen for that particular movie, but it tends to be rather desaturated and a little bit too dark on occasion. One of the things that you've heard me talk about many times, if you're a constant watcher of the show, is questionable lighting decisions. I think I even talked about it last week or whenever the last episode came out. That is because there's just a lot of directors who seem to take realistic lighting too seriously and not really consider what the experience is for the viewer. This movie, by comparison, does a really good job of making some very dark scenes nice and bright and easy to read, because it is very willing to use unrealistic sources of lighting in order to let you see what's going on. And that's not just to say that every scene is lit up just like it was daytime or anything like that. Not only does it do nighttime scenes meaningfully well in a way that you can still see. It also does some really smart and interesting lighting choices with the way lighting is placed. Sometimes that's realistic lighting and sometimes it's unrealistic lighting. And so getting to see anybody play with lighting in frame is always lovely to me, since so many directors seem to barely get the basic lighting correct. So to see, like, there's a couple of shots I'm thinking of where people come in or out of light, so that they can either do a reveal or it's a metaphorical thing or that sort of thing. In addition to all the other good lighting, those things are fun as well. Overall, this is a really colorful film as well. This could easily be dour and gray or brown or any other kind of aggressive color wash. It does have some color grading to it, but it is what looks to me like a sort of a modernized idea of a period color grade for the 1970s. You get that sort of slightly sepia, slightly brownish orangish kind of filter on a lot of things, but it's warm. It's not dull. It doesn't dull the other colors. It really just adds sort of it sort of boosts the warmth overall of the visuals. And I think it really works well, especially with a lot of the costumes and sets and stuff that they use for this film. I was not alive in the 70s. I'm not quite that old. So I can't speak to the exact authenticity of a lot of things, but it does seem like they did their due diligence in trying to keep things fairly appropriate for the time period, not include too much stuff that's explicitly anachronistic. And nothing really caught my eye to that end that seemed like they didn't. So everything else I'm going to be complimentary of because they went very hard on it. The cars that they use, the locations that they use, the stylings of the buildings that they're in, the furniture and carpets and wallpapers, and then of course the clothing and the makeup and the hair is all done really, really well, really sets you right in the era. I don't think they even mention the year at any point, and they don't really need to. They never acknowledge that this is a period piece, but it's very clear right off the bat. You don't have to they don't need to nudge you and be like, this is a period piece. 'Cause you can get it right off the bat from just some visual cues from the very start. It's really well done. I love it. And I love the idea of having something that's sort of a period piece that's a little bit nostalgic without being overly, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not basking in the nostalgia. It's not trying to harken back to better days or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, this is the weird stuff that was going on at the time. And in fact, a lot of the set pieces and events that happen are really kind of a social criticism of the time of, it's a period that's remembered for certain cultural changes that were, at least in the US, this is a very US specific movie, of course, cultural sort of changes that were happening at the time, differences in sort of cultural behavior in the post-war period, and the hippie movement and all those sorts of things. But also all these other things that were happening, the political climate, the sort of rise of a lot of changes in social expectations in corporate markets. I'm trying to dodge around it a little bit, but this movie has a significant portion of its content in reference to, let's say, what's the phrase I'm looking for? I don't know why I'm trying to dance around it. It's around pornography. So like that's a whole thing, and they make a bunch of jokes about it, and they make jokes about the fact that like and they're not just body jokes either. In fact, there's basically no body jokes in the entire film, really. A lot of the sort of like cases of business, all the stuff in that business is sort of treated just earnestly. It's not immune to being joked about, but it's not there to make a joke. It's just like, no, this is just an industry that was going on, and it's a plot point to this, and it's a set piece, and that's just sort of how it is. Now, I'm not going to say they didn't make that choice deliberately for a certain visual appeal and that sort of thing. But they're not like stooping to make a bunch of lowbrow jokes. So you can, nudge your buddy in the ribs with your elbow. That really doesn't go on. But there's a lot of interesting stuff going on around the culture, the sort of art of the time. Like I said, all of the corporatization of a lot of the cultural movements that were happening at the time, and how that also intersected with the politics of the time. And that's all we'll get back to the characters in a second. But one of the things I did find really interesting is that there is a rather unsubtle real world reference throughout the film about a certain set of political and corporate decisions that were made in the real world, and that a lot of people probably don't actually know about. And they go so far as they don't really ever beat you over the head with it, except for this one shot, which I kind of love, because I don't know how they pulled this off. There's one shot where a character stares directly into the camera and basically tells you exactly what's going on and why this is relevant to the plot and to the real world. And yet it somehow doesn't feel like a fourth wall break. It's not aggressively trying to lecture you in any way. This is by no means a case of like The Big Short or anything like that. It's doing nothing of the sort like that. But it's having this moment of being like, this was normalized, this happens, and this continues to happen in this thing and in other things that are like this. And then it just goes back to the movie, and it doesn't acknowledge it beyond that. It hits this perfect balance of completely unsubtle, but without feeling like it is lecturing you or proselytizing to you, or really trying to make any grandiose statement or shocking statement. It's just like, just remember, this is where we are. This is what things are like. And in some ways, I think that little message that it has is even more pertinent today than it was in 2016. So that was really interesting. It was kind of fun. And I was very pleased with how well I thought they executed that without making it feel too crazy, too overt. So back to the characters. This is obviously the two leads here being Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, really leading men from in Hollywood from two rather different eras. It's really interesting because Russell Crowe these days looks very old. I mean that with all due respect. But he looks like a very old man. And yes, it has been 10 years. But it is really interesting to think about how long I've watched him on screen, and how different he has appeared in various eras, even to the point that like he doesn't look greatly different from, say, Gladiator to The Nice Guys. But compared to how he looks now, and I'm sure, makeup and working out and all that kind of thing, whether he is or isn't doing that, has a lot of effect on his appearance. But it's just really interesting to continue to see him. And I hope that he continues to have a career. By all accounts, it sounds like he still has a pretty good working career currently. And then we have Ryan Gosling, who we've talked about before in a number of different movies, I think, who, continues to surprise me with the amount of acting range that he has. This is a movie where I think this version of Ryan Gosling is mostly a variation on himself. He's not really, this is not a movie that's asking for anyone to flex their acting abilities really majorly. But he is a very different kind of guy. And in both cases, really, like Russell Crowe has played both villains and heroes, and Gosling has really played more heroes than anything else. I'm trying to think if I can think of him as an explicit villain. You might say Drive, but yeah. So it's interesting to see a movie that is trying to take two actors, two very unique and well-known actors who also have a range of experiences under their belt, and put them into what feel like some very new setups. This again is like sort of where I really started to think about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that being with Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer, who are wonderful in that film. They both are, and both show performances that unique performances that I never saw them do in any other. They never acted like that in any other movie either of them ever did that I really saw. And I would say the same thing for this one. They are both, Crowe and Gosling are putting on fun, unique performances, and they're not character studies. This isn't a movie of great character depth, but they have range. They have pathos, they have an arc, they have growth, they learn from their experiences, and they have nuance. They're not good guys. Well, here's the thing. Let me pivot for a second and talk about the title. This is called The Nice Guys, and really that seems like it's intended as a framing device to be like, they're not nice guys though. Like, these are both kind of jerks. They're not explicitly mean, but they're working in a lot of shady industries with doing shady deals, hurting people, scamming people, those sorts of things in various ways. I don't think any of that's a spoiler. It's just, they're just, they're not cops. So, doing any sort of PI, enforcement type of stuff, any of that is of course going to be certainly in a gray area. The problem is they're a little bit too charismatic for us to ever feel like they're truly bad guys, especially when pretty much everybody around them is pretty unpleasant. And it's the comparison that really ruins any opportunity for us to, if that was the intention, to ever really look at them and think of them as truly unpleasant people. And the main moment that I thought that was particularly stood out as not working was there was an interaction fairly early on with Gosling and his daughter, and she has a reaction to him that just seemed a little bit out of touch with what we had seen of him that far in the film, and really throughout the rest of the film that would follow. And that was not a problem with her performance. That was just, I just didn't think that the line as written fit the person that we had seen it being said to. And so it was just a moment of, it's okay. It's not a problem. It's just, I don't believe that the context here is, these are pretty good guys under the circumstances. Like, they're not nice people. They're not really doing good. There's a lot wrong with them as individuals. But they're fine. And so that never really hit, if that was the intention. Not entirely clear whether that was the intention or not, but that's neither here nor there. So back to the characters. On that same point, the daughter, who is played by Anjuri Rice. I'm maybe mispronouncing her name. I swear I've seen her in other things before. The only thing I think I could have seen her in is apparently she had a minor role in the Spider-Man MCU films. I think she might have been. She might have. I didn't even look it up. I just saw the reference, but I think she might have been one of Mary Jane's friends. But anyway, I thought I had seen her in another more major role before, but her IMDb doesn't list anything that sticks out to me. I think she's great in this film. In fact, I think she might be the best actor in the entire film. I love her in this role. I love her delivery of her lines. She's just very, like, the writing is doing a lot of good work for her in the first place. She's written as a very compelling character, but her performance, both in her line delivery and her physical acting, is wonderful and so charming. And she's like, I think she's like 14 or 15 when she did this film, and plays it like a pro. She's awesome. You've heard me before talk about there's lots of bad kid actors out there, so I'm glad whenever there's a good one, I want to give them a special props. I mean, admittedly, by now it's now been 10 years since this movie released, which makes me feel old again. But I really enjoyed her, and like she's really on equal footing just about with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling in terms of her importance to the story and her level of screen time and characterization and that kind of stuff. I love the way she plays off of them. She's not like, that's the other thing with a lot of child characters and child actors, is they're often written in sort of siloed off ways where they are removed from a lot of the other actors, or they are, sort of orbiting objects, if that makes sense. She is very much a character unto herself, with basically, minus the fact that she has like certain limitations by not being an adult. She has basically all the same initiative and agency and decisiveness and thoughtfulness of any of the other adults in the room. And I love that for her. Her character is so much fun, and the actor did so good with the performance. I loved it. I really think that without her, the Crowe-Gosling chemistry is fine, but with her, it is made much, much better. It's really a trio, and it's incredibly charming. I just really enjoyed that. I don't even think the movie itself acknowledged just how critical she is to a lot of things that go on and how everything works out. She also is sort of, I don't want to give too much away, but she is kind of critical as a counterpoint to these two guys as well, because both Crowe and Gosling's characters are sort of, they're not quite to the level of bumbling idiots, but a lot of their sort of typical behavior rotates around what's clearly their individual histories, the way they operate, the things they do, their attempts to be good people, but ultimately falling back to bad behaviors, those sorts of things. Those are, they are sometimes played for comedic effect, sometimes played for genuine pathos. But she really adds a freshness to that, either as a direct way to push them out of their comfort zones, or to remind them sort of like who they are or can be, or those sorts of things. And it never feels, again, that's a thing that could feel very hokey. It could feel like, there's plenty of other buddy cop movies, buddy movies from the 80s and 90s in particular, that have like the two guys and then a third thing, whether it's a child, like a kid, a baby, an animal, whatever. And thankfully it completely avoids any of those sorts of tropes. Like I said, she's very much her own character and not just played as a way to. She's not just played as a way to get these guys to like just push them into the next plot beat or something like that, or to do the right thing. She's very much her own character. Anyway, I'm going in circles around that. I just really, really enjoyed her performance and think she deserves, both as actor and as character, deserves special acknowledgement as a nice twist in this genre and something that was special about it. All of the other characters, there's a lot of other sort of secondary, tertiary supporting roles in this movie, all that are played by great actors, all with great costumes, great makeup, all these sorts of things. Just really, really well produced, really well acted. Lots and lots of fun. And I will say that that's the thing that I think made this movie work really well for me, is I think if it had taken itself too seriously, it could have really flopped. But this is definitely very aware that it's a comedy, first and foremost. It manages to do that without accidentally straying too far into the comedic and losing the rest of its tone, because it is taking itself somewhat seriously. Like, despite these two bumbling idiots and their occasionally even stooping to slapstick levels of comedy, it's all very well executed. It's very well moderated. And it doesn't get in the way of the rest of the plot that they're trying to do. It is woven well into the narrative so that everything works out. And I think that's something that's also done well in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, though to a different flavor. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang can be pretty dark, mostly with spatterings of comedy. This is much more comedy woven all throughout in a Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is more of a black comedy or dark comedy, and this is more of a straight action comedy. And to bring it all the way around to my very first thought on this, again, part of the reason I shied away from this movie is I was really worried, especially coming out in the mid 2000s or the mid 2010s. This was on like the tail end of there being a lot of like really bad buddy comedy films that I think, I'm not going to name any because a lot of them are very well loved, but a lot of them where the main idea was the comedy and the two comedy guys who are doing comedy things, and then a plot accidentally happens to them sometimes. This is very much the opposite, and I'm very glad it didn't fall into really any of those pitfalls. On the music and stuff, just because that's particularly relevant for this era, I think it uses a lot of primarily licensed music, but otherwise like sound-alikes, and there may be some original compositions in there. But I enjoy the use of this, very, very dated sort of musical tones, lots of funk and disco stuff that works really well to sort of remind you of the era without like not necessarily the biggest hits, but if it was the biggest hits, it'd really bonk you over the head with it. But notable recordings from the era in addition to everything else, and adds nice flavor. So a complete side note that I noticed as we were going through, as I was looking through it as well, as I was just skimming the IMDb, I noticed, I believe it's Val Kilmer's son plays a minor role in the film. He only shows up very briefly, has a few lines, but just nice to have him in there. I think that is I don't know how many other Shane Black movies Val Kilmer is in, but I think he's one of the common one of the sort of like group of friends and coworkers that sort of rotated with Shane Black and Joel Silver, and so obviously Val Kilmer was still alive in 2016. I think he died last year, but he has had a lot of health complications over the years, so I think he's sort of been out of out of things for quite a long time. But it was just sort of, I don't know, a fun Easter egg in there. And I don't know if he's had a career after that, but yeah. Anything else about this? I don't know. This is just fun, and it's not asking too much of you. It's not asking too little. It's not completely dumb. It's clever enough. There are little nitpicks I could say where I wish they had spent a little bit more time extrapolating on certain elements of the core plot line, but I think it would have changed the tone potentially too much and gotten in the way of things. So I can see why they sort of left it about at the level of engagement where it is. This is fun. I think if you like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, this falls into a nearby park that you will enjoy. And if you're just looking for, something that's a little bit light and comedic while still being actiony and entertaining in that regard, I think this is a pretty darn good one. I enjoyed it a lot. Anyway, thank you for watching Solipsist Watched. I've been your host, Social Solipsist, and I'll see you guys next time.